let's start talking to one another again, and realizing that, we're not going to change things in this society by finding a critical mass of people who think just like we do in every one of the 40,000 communities in the US that we live in, rural or urban. We're not going to change things by finding people who think exactly like us. We got to start from where people are at. Most people have common sense and similar concerns, but we got to start talking. We can't let them divide us into, oh, you're a climate denier, or, oh, you want to take away my car and my hamburgers or whatever. This is ridiculous. We can break through this. We all care about our health. We all care about our kids' health and our grandkids' health. We all care about the health of the planet, really. People who go to church and religious services, they put it a different way than people who don't, perhaps. But we all get down to the bottom line of, nature is wonderful, life is great, and life can be exciting and fun. You don't have to be a millionaire to have a good life, or a billionaire to have a good life. So the practicalities of how we change farming and our food system is, basically we need to have organic farms be the overwhelming majority, just like they used to be. We need ranching to be based on, herbivores, grass-eating animals have to be eating them. Animals need to be outside and pasturing. These are all solutions that are obvious. But what causes things to be the way they are in terms of our food, our farming, our health? What are the drivers of degeneration, which is how I would characterize most of our society and our food, farming, and health practices, versus regeneration? Well, there's 4 drivers that I talk about in my book, Grassroots Rising. The first one is public awareness and consumer consciousness. It's just like we have to educate ourselves, and we have to educate those around us. And then we have to change our buying habits, our consumption habits, our cooking habits. That's an important part of change. The second driver is we need to pay attention to the farmer and rancher and land manager and healer practitioner best practices that are out there, because they're already out there. Every community in the United States, rural or urban, has people doing things the right way, growing food the right way, raising animals the right way, cooking, serving up food the right way, looking at our health conditions and using natural health remedies and practices. Yeah, there's some use for pills or industrial medicine at certain times, but most of our health problems can be solved the way they were always solved, with natural remedies and cures and so on. So the second driver is paying attention to the alternatives that are already there. The third one is public policy. Our governments are in such disrepute these days, and I'm not just talking the US. You ask the average person in Russia what they think of their government, or ask the average person in China what they think of their government, or, everyone across the world feels the same way. Like, what's going on? How come our governments don't represent us rather than the wealthy and the powerful? What is this? We're spending what Biden is saying, let's spend $871 billion for the military next year. this is more money. We're spending more money on our military than the next 10 nations combined that have big armies and, capacity to blow up the world and so on, like we do. This is crazy. This is crazy. So public policy, I think what we have to look at in the United States is like, hey, public policy is not just the White House and these 100 millionaires in the Senate and, the 435 people in the House of Representatives. It's just like, all right, yeah, the federal government is very important. But if you look at the local level, the county level, the city level, the state level, we have over 500,000 people in the United States who are elected public officials or appointed public officials. It's like 500,000. And we spend all our time thinking about these less than 500 people in Washington, D.C. We need to get involved at the local level. You want to change the health condition of our kids? Well, we got to get involved in our school districts. You want to change the way cities behave in terms of spraying, Roundup and herbicides along the roads and spraying them in parks and, acting like there's no problem with this. You got to get involved. So let's think about getting involved at the local level and starting to change policy, starting from where we're at and going up. Yes, we're going to have to change the federal government as soon as we can, but we can start to change local government and local policies right away. Okay, so we got public awareness, we got best practices, we got public policy. But what's the fourth big driver of whether we have a degenerate food, farming, and health system or a regenerative? Well, that's money. Money talks very loudly, louder than ever every day. We have to invest our public funds, our tax money, our savings in regenerative ways if we think, if we're going to change things. And we got to get private capital, which is huge. I mean, there's $125 trillion invested in stock markets and bonds across the world that's basically degenerating life. It's just like in the US, for example, people who have savings accounts because they're in a union or, they're a city employee or whatever, there's $20 trillion in these pension funds, 20 trillion. That's a lot of money. Where are they invested? Well, they're in the stock market. They're in mutual funds. Well, what does that money do? Well, it's, business as usual, degenerating things, leading us toward the cliff. Well, why don't people have control over their savings accounts, over their pensions? Well, I never really thought about that, and we got to start thinking about that. We got to get back control over our money. It's our money, a lot of it. And, the bank you're in, we use OCA, we use a credit union because it's a more, they listen to us more, and when you look at what the credit union does with your bank account, it's often quite different from what the big banks are doing. But I mean, we got to move our money out of these banks into places where we have some more control over it. This is not, we can't just sit back and think someone else is going to do this. We've got to pay attention to where our tax money is going and turn up the heat on these politicians. We've got to get back control over this. And finally, the wealthy people out there, the 1% who control most of the money in the world, we need to seek out the ones that actually have some ethics and some consciousness, and start talking to them. I never really had much interaction with bankers and investors and so on most of my life as an activist. But lately, I've been having these meetings with the 1% of the 1% who actually give a damn at this point. And what I'm finding is that a lot of them want to do the right thing. They're ready to invest in organic and regenerative farming practices. They're ready to invest and make donations and so on in reforesting the earth. They're ready to take a long look at things like, well, oh my God, if we supplied organic food for free to kids in school across the United States, we have these breakfast programs, lunch programs for low income kids, which is good. The problem is that the food is not good. We're not doing them any good. We're filling their bellies, but we're deteriorating their health. If you take a long look at this whole idea of food as medicine, you see that, you know what? Insurance companies and educational institutions would be better off if all of our kids had access to organic food in schools, period. There's a few school districts that do this across the US, but we got, I think, 80,000 school districts in America. How many of them are providing organic food in their cafeterias? How many of them are teaching the kids how to grow food in school gardens? How many of them are, getting their school staff to upgrade their cooking skills and their nutritional stuff? Very few. Okay. Do we want to be the leaders, quote, in the world in terms of educational performance of our students the way that we once supposedly were? Well, it's very simple. Stop feeding them junk at school. Okay. You look at something else, like people on Medicare, Medicaid, people who get food stamps, it's just like the overwhelming majority of healthcare expenses in this country are people in situations where, have you ever noticed what kind of food people eat in nursing homes? Have you ever noticed the kind of food that you can buy, for the most part, starting to change, but with food stamps, it's just like, this is crazy. Why aren't we feeding our elders in nursing homes the highest quality food there is, so that their health can improve, and that their lives can improve, and I think there's been analyses lately where hospitals, insurance companies see that, we would reduce healthcare costs in America if we simply provided organic, nutritious food to people on food stamps, in Medicare, receiving Social Security, and so on. And can you imagine the boost it will give to local food, to local farmers and ranchers? And if everyone starts to get involved, in this could begin to regenerate the whole society. And it makes sense economically. What we're doing now does not make sense. It's like serve up crap for everyone, make organic seem so expensive you can't afford it, and then have the highest healthcare costs in the world, twice as high as any industrialized country, and our health situation is the worst. We were the world leaders in the pandemic, in people who died where it said on their birth certificate one of the cofactors was COVID, or we're the world leaders in terms of obesity, in terms of heart disease, in terms of cancer, in terms of all these diseases that used to be, it really, since in 40 years, our chronic disease has doubled. And now most of our kids have a chronic disease as well. In the current generation, they've noticed, IQs have fallen 7%. And our kids and grandkids now have a lower life expectancy, less life expectancy than we did. And just look around. look at what the kids are going through. You know, I mean, we closed their schools, we made them wear masks, we made them afraid to hug people, we made them terrified of strangers, you know, and now they got to look at a world like my son told me recently. He said, he's 24. He said, Dad, he said, like, all the young people, it's just like they can't figure out how are we going to survive. You know, they're working their ass off at their jobs and going to school or whatever, and they can't make ends meet, and they don't see that the adults are trying to deal with these crises that are out there. You know, wars raging over what the hell is going on. I mean, we have to sit down with the people of Russia and China and Europe and all the countries of the world and come to terms with these crises that are pressing down on all of us. This is not a question of some country's natural resources or whatever that, you know, both sides want them or want to control them or whatever. It's like we got a global crisis. We got the people of the world all thinking the same thing, which is, God, the rich people, they don't give a damn about us. The governments don't give a damn about us. You know, what can we do? Well, you know, one thing we can do is start trying to communicate, start trying to understand, you know, and start changing in our everyday lives. No one forces you to go out to a restaurant and eat food that's substandard. You know, if you're going to go to a restaurant, pick out a family-owned restaurant that's, you know, trying to do the right thing. You know, buy from farmers that are trying to do the right thing. You know, it's like we don't have to deal with this. Okay, the more, can we really draw down enough carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and stop putting up CO2 and methane and nitrous oxide from our food and farming and industrialized systems? Yes, we can. I lay it out in my book very clearly. We're not going to get rid of fossil fuels use in the next 10 years, but we easily can reduce our emissions of fossil fuels by 50%. We need to all start thinking about investing in energy conservation in our homes, in our communities is a very good investment. Who knows what's going to happen to our savings, our dollars in the banks, and you know what the global elite have in store for us. But I can tell you that an investment in learning how to grow your own food, use less energy, thinking about your lifestyle, what makes you happy, how can you be happier and reduce your emissions. But the other thing is that we've figured out as organic farmers and ranchers around the world how to do things in a way that sucks down carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And what is it? I mean, we learned about this in high school, but I know some of us maybe weren't paying real attention that day, but basically photosynthesis is the incredible ability of plants, trees, grasses, you know, vegetables, fruits, grain, incredible ability of plants to suck down carbon dioxide out of the air and turn it into the living plant matter above the ground. They're using, you know, solar energy to turn this carbon dioxide into living matter. But what we didn't know very clearly until the last 10, 20 years is that part of this carbon dioxide, part of the carbon in the plant doesn't stay above ground. About 30% of it goes through the plant, through their root system, into the soil. And what happens in the soil is that the soil microorganisms take that liquid carbon that the plant or the tree or the grass is putting through their root system, and they exchange it for the nutrients and the minerals that plant needs to grow and survive. And it's this great chain of being that keeps things going. This is what life is all about. So if you increase the amount of plant and tree photosynthesis, you actually draw down more carbon. So, okay, you remember I mentioned there used to be 6 trillion trees on the earth, and there's 3 trillion now. Well, regenerative foresters have figured out that we can easily plant 1 trillion more trees in the next 10 or 20 years in the areas that used to have trees that don't have them now. You know, we can put more trees even in our urban areas. I believe urban areas are just 7% or something of the land mass in the US. But the more trees we can get going, and, you know, we can be innovative. Let's have nut trees. Let's have trees that have some fruits on them, if possible. We can plant a hell of a lot more trees. We can cool off our cities. I mean, there's studies that show that the more trees, the greater the density of trees in urban areas, the better the mental health of the population, less crime, less anxiety and anguish and so on. We need to reforest America. It's like that great legend of Johnny Appleseed has got to come back. This is a lot of what I do right now. It's like I plant thousands and thousands of trees with our team here in north central Mexico, to using native species to plant trees that can benefit farmers, ranchers, people in general. And we are going to, we say we're going to green the desert. 40% of the Earth's surface is semi-arid or arid, in the sense that it's pretty much impossible to grow crops without irrigation. And most small farmers in the world, there's almost 600 million small farms. Most of them don't have access to wells and irrigation, and they're not going to. So we got to do this.